October 16, 1946. Inside Nuremberg prison, the corridors are silent, but history is wide awake. Behind reinforced doors and guarded walls, the men who once commanded armies, signed death warrants, and shaped the machinery of genocide are no longer feared. They are waiting for the final judgment the world has never delivered before. This is not a battlefield. There are no crowds, no speeches, no salutes. Only concrete floors, harsh electric lights, and the slow ticking of a clock counting down the last hours of Nazi power. Beyond these walls lies the execution chamber. 3 gallows stand ready. Thick hemp ropes are carefully measured. Each detail is precise, mechanical, unforgiving. Justice here will not be symbolic, it will be physical. These men were once untouchable. Reich ministers, generals, architects of terror who reshaped Europe through cruelty, ideology, and mass murder. Now, stripped of titles and uniforms, they sit alone with their thoughts. Some pray, some rage, some cling to denial until the very end. And one of them, Hermann Göring, Hitler's chosen successor, has already altered the course of this night in a way no one expected. Guards whisper. Witnesses assemble. American military officials take their places, aware that what happens here will echo far beyond Germany. This is more than punishment. This is the world attempting to prove that even absolute power can be held accountable. Outside, the city of Nuremberg sleeps. Inside, history holds its breath. Because when the first name is called, when the footsteps begin down the corridor, when the trapdoor is prepared, the Third Reich will end, not with victory, but with a fall into darkness. And what happens next will shock even those who came to see justice done. Long before the gallows were built, before the uniforms and the salutes, the men now sitting in Nuremberg prison were not born monsters. They were shaped. Many came of age in the ruins of World War I, a defeated Germany humiliated, impoverished, and furious. Streets filled with veterans who felt betrayed. Families struggling to survive. A nation desperate for meaning, pride, and someone to blame. Into that chaos stepped Adolf Hitler, and the ideology that promised rebirth through obedience, nationalism, and racial purity. For men like Hermann Göring, Joachim von Ribbentrop, Wilhelm Keitel, and Ernst Kaltenbrunner, Nazism offered something intoxicating: power with purpose, violence justified as duty. Göring had once been a decorated fighter ace. Keitel, a career officer who believed loyalty outweighed conscience. Ribbentrop, a failed businessman obsessed with status. None of them began as executioners. But each learned the same lesson: advancement came through obedience, and morality was expendable. The Nazi system rewarded cruelty. Promotions followed compliance. Doubt was weakness. Questioning orders meant disappearance. Over time, ideology hardened into routine. Deportation orders became paperwork. Mass shootings became logistics. Human beings were reduced to numbers, quotas, and transport schedules. And as their authority grew, so did their distance from consequence. They lived in luxury while millions starved, froze, and burned. The suffering they caused was abstract to them, far away, hidden behind layers of command. By the time the war turned against Germany, these men were trapped by the very system they had helped build. Retreat was impossible. Admission of guilt unthinkable. So they pressed forward. Deeper, darker. And now, seated in prison cells at Nuremberg, the past finally stands face to face with them. Because the beliefs that lifted them to power are the same beliefs that carried them here, toward judgment. Power did not corrupt these men overnight, it trained them. As the Third Reich expanded, so did the scale of its crimes. What began as political repression quickly evolved into organized terror. Laws stripped Jews, Roma, and political opponents of rights. Arrests followed. Then disappearances. By the time war erupted in 1939, cruelty had become policy. Under the authority of men now condemned at Nuremberg, the machinery of death accelerated. Einsatzgruppen followed German armies east, executing entire villages in forests and ravines. Trains rolled day and night, packed with human cargo bound for camps designed not for imprisonment, but for annihilation. This was not chaos. It was administration. Orders were typed, signed, stamped. Timetables were drawn. Body counts were recorded with bureaucratic precision. Kaltenbrunner oversaw mass murder through the SS security apparatus. Keitel authorized criminal orders that legalized execution without trial. Göring coordinated economic exploitation, draining occupied nations while prisoners were worked to death. Survivors would later describe the smell of burning flesh, the screams behind sealed doors, the silence that followed mass shootings. At Nuremberg, these testimonies filled the courtroom, relentless, undeniable. The defendants sat motionless as films were screened. Piles of corpses. Bulldozers pushing bodies into pits. Emaciated prisoners staring through barbed wire. Some looked away. Others stared coldly ahead. Yet even as defeat loomed, the killing continued. Death marches claimed thousands. Camps were evacuated, prisoners driven into snow and darkness, shot when they collapsed. There was no mercy at the end, only efficiency. And when Allied forces finally arrived, they uncovered a continent scarred beyond comprehension. Evidence so overwhelming that denial became impossible. The world now knew the truth. And in Nuremberg prison, the men responsible began to understand something chilling. The system they built to destroy others was about to turn against them. The final night begins quietly. Inside Nuremberg prison, the condemned are informed that the hour has come. There are no speeches. No last-minute appeals. Just a procedural calm that makes the moment even more unbearable. Each man is allowed a final meal. Some eat. Some cannot. Hands shake. Faces tighten. A few attempt dignity. Others crumble under the weight of what is about to happen. Then the guards discover something impossible. Hermann Göring, once the most powerful man in Nazi Germany after Hitler, is dead. In his cell, he has bitten down on a cyanide capsule, smuggled past security and swallowed just hours before his execution. He has cheated the gallows. Shock ripples through the prison. For the witnesses, this was not justice, it was escape. Göring denied the world its final reckoning, robbing the victims of closure and leaving behind only a body and unanswered questions. But the night does not stop. One by one, the remaining prisoners are led down the corridor. Their footsteps echo against stone walls. Some mutter prayers. Others whisper defiance. A few offer final words that reveal nothing learned and nothing regretted. Inside the execution chamber, the gallows wait beneath blinding lights. Ropes are placed. Hoods lowered. Names read aloud. There is no ceremony, only function. The trapdoor opens. Bodies drop. Silence follows. For each execution, a doctor steps forward. A stethoscope. A pause. A nod. Death is pronounced. By the end, 10 men are gone. What remains is not triumph, but gravity. Because in that room, the world confronted something terrifying. That human beings, given ideology and power, can build hell on earth, and walk to their deaths still believing they were right. The executions end just before dawn. Inside the chamber, the bodies are carefully lowered, examined, and placed into plain wooden coffins, no flags, no honors, no names carved in stone. The men who once demanded absolute loyalty from millions are now reduced to paperwork and procedure. Justice here is deliberate, controlled, final. Photographs are taken. Weights recorded. Death certificates signed. Every step is documented to ensure the world can never claim this moment did not happen. Soon after, the bodies are transported in secrecy. They are cremated at a Munich crematorium, their ashes scattered into the Isar River. No graves are allowed. No sites for pilgrimage. No place for future extremists to worship the memory of mass murderers. This, too, is part of the sentence. What unfolded at Nuremberg was more than execution, it was a legal precedent unlike any before it. For the first time in history, an international tribunal declared that leaders could be held personally accountable for crimes against humanity. Following orders was no longer an excuse. Sovereignty no longer shielded genocide. The Nuremberg trials established a line the world claimed it would never allow to be crossed again. And yet, as the prison emptied and the witnesses departed, the weight of what had been revealed lingered. Entire systems of cruelty had operated in plain sight. Millions had been murdered with administrative efficiency. Justice had been delivered, but it could never undo the suffering. Still, on that October morning in 1946, something changed. The architects of atrocity were gone. And the world, for a brief moment, stood still, forced to confront the price of unchecked power, and the meaning of accountability. When the doors of Nuremberg prison finally closed, the executions faded into history, but their meaning did not. What happened inside that chamber was never just about punishment. It was a warning. A line drawn in blood and law, declaring that there are crimes so vast, so deliberate, that time, rank, and ideology cannot erase responsibility. The men executed at Nuremberg believed themselves untouchable. They hid behind uniforms, paperwork, and obedience. They convinced themselves that morality was flexible and that power would protect them forever. It did not. Nuremberg exposed a truth that remains uncomfortable even today. the greatest atrocities are rarely committed by monsters alone, but by ordinary men who surrender conscience for belonging, ambition, or fear. This is why these final hours matter. Because history does not repeat itself through spectacle, it repeats itself through silence, denial, and indifference. When societies stop asking questions. When loyalty becomes more important than humanity. When cruelty is justified as necessity. The gallows at Nuremberg were dismantled decades ago. But the choices that led there still exist, in governments, institutions, and individuals. Remembering this moment is not about the Nazis who died. It is about the millions who never had a trial. The voices that were silenced long before justice arrived. If stories like this matter to you, stories that confront power, expose hidden history, and refuse to let truth fade, then stay with this channel. Like the video. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because the next chapter reveals the final words spoken before the trapdoors opened. And what those words tell us about human nature itself.